Compound Your Behavior: Daily Disciplines That Double Over Time. Written by Ronnie Rowland. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. The Silent Math of Self-Mastery. It doesn't look like much. A drop in a bucket. A brick in the wall. A seed in the dirt. Nothing changes after the first drop. No wall rises after the first brick. No sprout appears the moment you bury the seed. That's where most people quit. They stop because nothing moved. Because the mirror didn't reflect a six-pack. Because the bank account didn't swell. Because the scale didn't blink back a smaller number. But mastery never announces itself early. It compounds quietly. This book isn't about hacks or heroic feats. It's about rhythm, small actions done daily, stacked like dominoes in the direction of who you want to become. Not sexy. Not viral. Just powerful in the way a glacier is powerful, slow, steady, inevitable. James Clear said, You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Your systems are your habits. And habits are behaviors on autopilot. The behaviors you set on autopilot today: read 10 pages, walk the block, make the call, become compound interest for your future self. The change is invisible. Until it's not. What you're holding isn't just a book. It's a manual for turning tiny, daily disciplines into exponential returns. Each chapter is a step. Each step is small. But like interest, it adds up, then doubles, then explodes. This isn't motivational fluff. It's behavioral math. And the earlier you start, the greater the return. Let's begin. Chapter 1: The Interest You Can't See. In a quiet corner of Tokyo, there's a bamboo species that spends 5 years doing nothing, or so it seems. You water it daily, tend the soil, protect it from pests. But above ground? No growth. No movement. Just stillness. Then, in its 5th year, something wild happens. It shoots up 90 feet in 6 weeks. People call it magic. It's not. It's structure. Roots developing underground, dense, invisible infrastructure that supports explosive growth later. Most people never make it to year 5. They abandon the habit, the goal, the dream, not because it didn't work, but because they didn't wait long enough to see the growth. We live in a world trained to expect speed, one-click orders, overnight shipping, instant streaming. But behavior doesn't obey that timeline. It obeys its own, slow, stubborn, silent. You floss one night, nothing changes. You floss every night for 3 years, your dentist asks if you've been using gold-plated string. The difference? Compounding. Not just in money, but in mindset. Small actions, repeated over time, forge identity. Each time you do a push-up, you cast a vote. I'm someone who takes care of my body. Each time you read, you cast another. I'm someone who invests in my mind. Each time you choose discipline over dopamine, you harden the foundation of who you're becoming. That's the math nobody teaches in school. One sales call doesn't move the needle. One paragraph doesn't make a book. One walk doesn't transform your health. But they're not supposed to. They're meant to be drops in the compound interest jar of your character. The moment you understand this, your standards shift. You stop asking, "Did this work today?" and start asking, "What happens if I keep doing this for a year?" That question builds forests. It rewires your satisfaction loop, from outcome chasing to rhythm keeping. And rhythm always beats intensity in the long run. Anyone can sprint for a week. Few can walk a mile every day for a decade. But it's the walkers who win. Research from the University of London showed that habit formation, true, embedded change, takes an average of 66 days, not 21. And the habits that stick longest? They're the ones tied to identity, not outcomes. When you act in alignment with who you want to be, even small behaviors become sacred. Want to change your life? Start with your daily. Not your goals. Not your dreams. Not your vision board. Your daily. Because the man who reads 10 pages a day ends up finishing 18 books a year. The woman who writes 200 words a morning ends up with a manuscript in 6 months. The leader who makes one meaningful call a day ends up with a network that opens doors money can't. But none of that happens if you keep digging up the seed to check if it's growing. Discipline is doing the thing and not needing applause. Not needing proof. Just trusting that roots grow first. In time, they always do. The interest you can't see today becomes the windfall you can't stop tomorrow. And all you did was keep showing up. Next, we'll talk about why consistency isn't just a strategy. It's your superpower. Compounding applies to behavior just like money. Daily disciplines forge identity before results. Change is invisible until it's undeniable. Where in your life are you abandoning something because the growth isn't visible yet? Choose one small behavior. Commit to it daily for the next 7 days, no skip days, no expectations. Just rhythm. Chapter 2: Consistency is a superpower. If talent is the spark, consistency is the oxygen. One burns hot. The other keeps the fire alive. Most people live in short bursts. They start with ambition, crash into boredom, and bail at the first plateau. They think their problem is discipline. But it's not. It's misunderstanding the math of transformation. Consistency isn't about perfection. It's about rhythm. Show up. Miss a beat? Show up again. The power isn't in never failing, it's in never fully stopping. Imagine a leaky faucet, dripping once every 5 seconds. Useless, right? Now put a bucket under it. Come back in a day. Full. Come back in a week. Overflowing. That's what consistency does. It fills the bucket of your future when you're too focused on how slow the drops feel today. Psychologist B.F. Skinner once demonstrated that habits are more likely to stick when rewards are intermittent. In other words, when success doesn't come every time, we actually hold on longer. That's why gamblers keep pulling levers, and why disciplined people keep showing up despite flat progress lines. The result doesn't need to arrive every day, the identity does. Every time you honor the action, even if it's just 10 minutes, you reinforce belief. This is who I am. That's no small thing. Because identity drives behavior more than motivation ever will. Look at anyone who's mastered anything, and you'll see the same story. The athlete who ran drills on Christmas. The artist who sketched every morning. The entrepreneur who followed up even when no one responded. The world doesn't always reward the most gifted. It rewards the most consistent. Consistency shrinks the gap between goals and systems. Between ambition and action. It's the mortar between the bricks. Without it, everything collapses, slowly, then suddenly. The reason it feels hard is because you've been trained to crave novelty. New workouts. New diets. New ideas. But the people who change their lives aren't constantly chasing new. They're refining old. They're repeating simple actions so consistently they become reflex. Consider the Seinfeld strategy. The comedian famously kept a giant wall calendar and marked a red X for every day he wrote jokes. His goal? Don't break the chain. He didn't aim for brilliance. He aimed for rhythm. Day after day. X after X. Until output became inevitable. That's the secret most people miss. The longer you keep the rhythm, the less effort it takes. Like pushing a flywheel, hard at first, then smoother, then unstoppable. Behavior compounds into identity. Identity takes over. And suddenly what felt hard becomes automatic. But you have to earn automatic. And you earn it with consistency. Research from Duke University found that about 45% of our daily behavior is habit-driven. That means nearly half of what we do isn't conscious, it's looped. Which gives you a choice: either your loops are working for you, or they're quietly working against you. Consistency lets you rewire the loop. You're not fighting for massive wins. You're fighting for motion. Motion creates momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence fuels more action. And all of it started with a decision. Today I show up. The elite aren't made in moments. They're built in the boring. In the unnoticed. In the days that feel forgettable but aren't. So don't chase intensity. Build consistency. Because in the end, it's not what you do once in a while that changes you. It's what you do without fail. Next, we'll explore how small beats big when you play the long game. Consistency beats intensity over time. Habits shape identity, even when results lag. Progress doesn't require brilliance, just rhythm. What's one small thing you've done inconsistently that could change everything if done daily? Pick a visible calendar. Start an unbroken chain for one daily habit, one red X at a time. Chapter 3: Small always beats big. A lion doesn't win the hunt with brute strength. It wins with patience, timing, and one well-placed strike. Precision over power. Small over big. It's the same with behavior. We romanticize big moves, quitting the job, running the marathon, launching the business overnight. But the truth? Most transformation is quiet, humble, unimpressive to the naked eye. Big is loud. Small is leveraged. Big burns out. Small builds up. The trick isn't doing more. It's doing less more often. A Stanford study on habit formation found that people who started with tiny, manageable habits were far more likely to stick with them than those who made massive changes all at once. Why? Because small isn't threatening. Small slips under the radar of resistance. Try writing 2,000 words a day, and your brain rebels. Try 200 and it shrugs. No big deal. But do that for 90 days and you've written a book. Small actions are stealth architects. They redesign your days without triggering alarm. Over time, they lay a foundation so strong you don't remember what life was like before them. But here's the trap. Because small feels insignificant, most people skip it. They wait for a big push. A perfect Monday. A new month. A clean slate. They overlook the power of a single push-up, a single glass of water, a single sentence in a journal. But bricks become cathedrals. Drops become oceans. Pages become novels. When you embrace small, you start building things no one else sees, until suddenly they do. Olympic coach Dan Pfaff once said that greatness isn't about doing 100 things 1% better. It's doing one thing 100% better. That's small focus with big returns. That's compounding in action. And here's where it gets exponential: small action stack. One habit improves your energy, which improves your focus, which improves your output, which fuels your confidence. Now you're in a loop. Not of hustle, but of momentum. This is how behavior scales. Because small habits are sustainable. They require less willpower, less emotional bargaining. You don't need motivation to tie your shoes. Make your habits that small, that automatic, that frictionless. This isn't theory. It's neuroscience. The brain wires new behaviors through repetition and reward. The smaller the habit, the easier it is to repeat. The more repeatable it is, the faster the brain hardwires it. Once wired, the action takes less effort, less thought. Eventually, it becomes part of you. But it all starts with shrinking the scope. Instead of running 5 miles, commit to putting on your shoes. Instead of reading 50 pages, commit to opening the book. Instead of meditating 20 minutes, commit to sitting still for 2. The habit is the doorway. Once you're through, momentum often does the rest. What derails most people is ambition without architecture. They build castles in their mind but never lay a single brick. They dream big but never act small. And without the small, big never happens. Small is how you begin. Small is how you build. Small is how you win. Next, we'll look at how your identity shifts when you start doing small things consistently, and why who you become matters more than what you achieve. Small habits are easier to start and stick. Compounding happens through tiny, repeatable actions. Small builds momentum, which drives identity change. Where are you overcomplicating change by thinking too big? Pick one important habit. Shrink it to a version so small it's impossible to skip. Start today. Chapter 4: Identity is the real ROI. A person doesn't become a runner by finishing a marathon. They become a runner the moment they choose to run on a rainy Tuesday when no one's watching. Identity isn't a result. It's a repetition. We tend to think of change as something we do to get something else. I write to finish a book. I train to lose weight. I study to pass the test. But the real payoff isn't the goal. It's the identity forged in the process. Goals are events. Identity is evolution. Behavior compounds. But identity multiplies. Every time you show up for a small habit, you reinforce a belief about who you are. This isn't motivation. It's proof. A tiny receipt that says, "This is like me." And over time, those receipts become a resume. They speak louder than the old stories you tell yourself. Say you want to build confidence. You don't need a pep talk. You need evidence. Evidence that you act with courage, show up consistently, and follow through. Confidence doesn't float in on clouds. It grows brick by brick through identity-aligned behavior. This is why daily disciplines matter. Not because they move the world today, but because they shift how you see yourself. When you journal every morning, you're not just writing. You're becoming someone who reflects. When you walk each night, you're becoming someone who honors their body. When you wake early, you're becoming someone who moves with intention. These are not checklists. They are mirrors. Research from the University of British Columbia shows that when people focus on who they want to become rather than what they want to achieve, they're more likely to sustain motivation over the long term. That's because identity is sticky. It pulls you forward. It resists sabotage. Think about the power of language. "I'm trying to quit smoking" keeps the struggle alive. "I'm not a smoker" signals a shift. One is effort. The other is embodiment. The difference is identity. This is also why inconsistency feels so jarring. When you act out of alignment with your new identity, it doesn't just feel like failure. It feels like betrayal. Because once you've begun to change, your baseline shifts. The old version of you isn't comfortable anymore. That discomfort is a gift. Most people underestimate how fast identity compounds. 1 week of intentional discipline, and suddenly you start seeing yourself differently. You carry yourself with a little more gravity. You think twice before breaking your streak. Not out of guilt, but out of alignment. Here's the twist: identity change isn't just the result of behavior. It's also the fuel. The more you identify with the behavior, the more likely you are to repeat it. And every repetition strengthens the identity. It's a loop. A virtuous cycle. A flywheel that starts slow and ends with speed. So don't aim to finish the race. Aim to become a runner. Don't just complete the project. Become a builder. Don't just check the habit. Become the person who does it without needing to remember why. Because when identity locks in, discipline gets easier. Consistency becomes natural. And growth no longer feels like effort, it feels like alignment. Next, we'll dive into why your environment either fights your discipline or fuels it, and how to design for success without willpower. Repeated behavior shapes identity faster than goals. Identity-based habits stick longer than outcome-based ones. Small wins are proof of who you're becoming. What identity are your current habits reinforcing, intentionally or not? Write down one sentence. I am the type of person who. Fill it in. Then live it today. Chapter 5. Environment eats willpower. A lion raised in a zoo doesn't become soft because it lacks strength. It becomes soft because it lacks resistance. The cage removed the hunt, and without the hunt, the lion forgets what it means to be wild. Humans are no different. Behavior doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in a setting. And your setting is either sharpening your habits or dulling them. We like to believe we're creatures of decision. But research tells a different story. According to Duke University, up to 45% of our daily actions are driven by environment-triggered habits, not conscious choices. The room, the lighting, the people, the phone in your pocket, they all speak before your discipline gets a chance to whisper. That's why a smoker struggles to quit when surrounded by other smokers. Why it's easier to eat clean at home than in a break room stocked with donuts. The environment shapes the default. This isn't weakness. It's wiring. We are built to follow the path of least resistance. So if your gym clothes are in the trunk of your car, the resistance wins. But if they're next to your bed? You just tip the odds in your favor. Small friction makes or breaks big intentions. Want to read more? Leave the book on your pillow. Want to stop doom scrolling? Charge your phone outside the bedroom. Want to eat better? Keep junk food out of sight, or better yet, out of reach entirely. This isn't about restriction. It's about alignment. Your environment should behave like an ally, not an adversary. Every object, every space, every routine either whispers, "Stay the course," or tempts you off track. That's why great behavior doesn't just need discipline. It needs design. James Clear calls this environmental design. It's the practice of crafting your surroundings to make your desired behavior easier and your undesired behavior harder. It sounds simple, but it's powerful. Because willpower is a battery. And every decision drains it. Remove the need for decisions, and you remove the drain. Steve Jobs wore the same black turtleneck every day, not for fashion, but for focus. One less choice in the morning. One more ounce of clarity for what mattered. That's design. And it works because discipline is fragile when overloaded. Most people think they fail at behavior because they're weak. In reality, their environments are strong, in the wrong direction. A messy workspace discourages productivity. A cluttered kitchen encourages mindless snacking. A friend group that normalizes quitting makes persistence feel foolish. But the opposite is also true. Clean spaces energize. Visual cues nudge. Supportive people elevate. This is the silent force behind successful routines, the setup. The environment speaks to your subconscious before your goals ever get a say. There's a reason Navy SEALs obsess over gear layout. Why writers set up specific desks. Why athletes wear the same socks. These aren't quirks. They're triggers. Anchors. Environmental cues that prime the mind for a certain state. You don't need more willpower. You need better defaults. The game isn't won by fighting temptation. It's won by removing it. Or replacing it. Or hiding it behind 3 steps of friction while your desired habit sits 1 inch away. This is how you take the invisible and make it inevitable. Next, we'll explore how streaks and momentum create emotional glue for habits, and why progress feels better than perfection. Environment silently shapes behavior more than willpower. Small design choices can eliminate major resistance. Set your surroundings to serve your habits, not sabotage them. What's one part of your environment that quietly pulls you away from who you want to become? Modify one space, a desk, kitchen, or morning routine, so your desired behavior is the default, not the exception. Chapter 6. Momentum loves a streak. A snowball doesn't start as an avalanche. It begins with a single roll. One small push, barely worth noticing. But keep it moving, and each turn adds mass, speed, and force. Momentum doesn't ask for intensity. It asks for continuity. That's what a streak is. A visible chain of your invisible effort. It's how small, ordinary days combine into extraordinary transformation. The problem is, we're trained to worship peaks, launch days, finish lines, big milestones. But those peaks are built on plateaus. And the plateaus are held together by streaks. Jerry Seinfeld didn't become prolific by writing great jokes. He became prolific by writing jokes daily. His only rule? Don't break the chain. 1 red X on the calendar became 2, then 10, then a wall. Not of genius. Of rhythm. And genius often hides inside rhythm. A streak works because it rewires your reward system. Most habits die in the valley, when the results are still invisible, but the effort feels high. But when you stack days, the streak becomes its own reward. The act of continuation replaces the need for validation. Behavioral science calls this progress-based reinforcement. We're more likely to continue behaviors that create emotional evidence of growth. Streaks provide that evidence, even when external results haven't shown up yet. The longer the streak, the harder it is to break. Not because it's harder to do the thing, but because you don't want to lose the history. You've built equity. You've created narrative. You've become someone who shows up. That identity shift fuels consistency. And consistency feeds momentum. Momentum is the closest thing we have to magic in the world of self-discipline. It doesn't make the work easy, but it does make the start automatic. And once you've started, half the battle's already won. There's also a compounding confidence effect. Each day you follow through, your brain records a win. Not a flashy, headline-grabbing win, but a quiet one. And quiet wins add up. Miss one day? That's life. Miss two? That's a pattern. This is why the never miss twice rule exists. 1 break is a bump. 2 is a slide. 3, and gravity takes over. Streaks are visual proof that you're becoming someone different. They show that the habit isn't random, it's real. Not because you did it once, but because you keep doing it. But beware, perfection isn't the goal. Progress is. You're not a machine. You're a builder. The point isn't to beat yourself into flawless execution, it's to develop the emotional attachment to forward motion. That's where the streak draws its power. Apps have learned this. That's why meditation platforms track your days. Language tools give you flames. Fitness trackers reward you with badges. These aren't gimmicks. They're behavioral levers. They turn invisible effort into visible accomplishment. But you don't need an app. You need a wall, a calendar, a journal, somewhere to mark the days and remind yourself, I showed up. Because motion compounds. Movement creates identity. And every streak started with day 1. You don't need to build forever. You need to build today. Next, we'll explore the silent killer of compounding, interruption, and how to bulletproof your habits against it. Streaks create momentum, and momentum multiplies behavior. Visible progress boosts emotional commitment to habits. Don't break the chain is more powerful than motivation. Where have you built momentum before, and what derailed it? Start a streak tracker today. Choose one habit, and record each day you complete it. Protect it like it's your edge, because it is. Chapter 7: Interruption is the enemy. A rocket doesn't burn the most fuel in orbit. It burns it in takeoff, breaking gravity's pull, punching through resistance, establishing momentum. Interrupt that ascent, and the mission fails before it begins. Habits work the same way. Starting takes the most effort. Keeping momentum is cheaper. But interruption? That's the killer. It doesn't just pause your progress. It resets the cost. Interruption is seductive because it rarely looks like destruction. It wears a friend's voice, a phone buzz, a browser tab. It disguises itself as urgency. But its aim is the same, to unhook you from rhythm. We like to think habits are fragile because we're weak. But often, they're fragile because we allow friction to re-enter the system. A late night here, a skipped workout there, and suddenly the streak is gone. The identity wobbles. The story cracks. The real danger of interruption isn't missing one rep. It's the story that follows. I missed 2 days. Maybe I'm not that committed. Maybe this isn't working. And that narrative doesn't just stop action. It erases it. Behavioral psychologist Roy Baumeister found that self-control functions like a muscle. It fatigues with overuse. But environment, as we've seen, plays a crucial role in reducing that fatigue. The fewer decisions you face, the less strained your willpower becomes. Which means one of the best ways to protect your habits is to design interruption-resistant systems. Put simply, make your habits harder to derail. If your writing habit lives in a folder 5 clicks deep, move it to your desktop. If your phone kills your focus, place it in another room. If your gym bag slows you down in the morning, pack it the night before. Every second of prep shields you from the excuse factory your brain fires up when resistance kicks in. Another tool, ritual. Rituals are behavioral anchors. They tell your brain, this is what we do now. Light a candle before journaling. Use the same playlist before workouts. Start the same breathing exercise before deep work. These aren't quirks. They're gates. And gates protect your compound interest. Also, beware of false progress. Consuming another video on productivity isn't the same as applying what you've learned. Thinking about your habit isn't your habit. Protect the doing. The world is filled with people who plan better than they execute. Execution is what compounds. Interruption has a cousin, restart syndrome. It's the cycle of stopping, feeling guilt, overcorrecting with intensity, then burning out again. The antidote isn't trying harder. It's rebuilding smaller. Restarting at one push-up. One page. One moment of stillness. Because when you make restarting gentle, you make quitting less permanent. In martial arts, the concept of yukami means learning how to fall well. Not avoiding falls, but mastering recovery. Habits need yukami too. You will get interrupted. Life will swing. The key is bounce back speed. Miss a day? Fine. Return fast. Miss 2? Rebuild now. Don't wait for Monday. Don't wait for perfect. Perfect is the enemy of compounded. Ultimately, discipline is defense. Defense against disruption. Against distraction. Against the easy slide back into default. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be persistent. And persistence survives when the cost of restarting is low and the identity behind the behavior is strong. Next, we'll look at the invisible drivers behind habit sustainability, emotions, and how to make your habits feel good enough to stick. Interruption resets the cost of momentum. Rituals and environment can block distractions before they start. Bounce back speed matters more than never failing. What interruptions most often derail your habits, and what systems can you build to block them? Pick one habit and add a 30-second ritual before it. Use that ritual to signal, this is sacred. Chapter 8. Feel it to keep it. A habit that feels good is a habit that sticks. A habit that feels like punishment dies quietly in the corner, buried under guilt and unmet expectations. Emotion is the adhesive of behavior. It doesn't just follow action, it seals it in memory. The way you feel during and after a habit matters more than how impressive the habit looks. That's why two people can do the same action. One thrives, the other quits. It wasn't the task. It was the emotional residue it left behind. The science backs this. Behavioral researcher B.J. Fogg emphasizes the power of positive reinforcement. His findings? When a habit is immediately followed by a small celebration, something as simple as saying, yes, or smiling, the likelihood of repeating it increases dramatically. You're training the brain to associate the behavior with reward. And when the brain feels rewarded, it craves the loop again. But most people do the opposite. They finish the workout and punish themselves for not doing more. They complete the reading and think about the chapters they skipped. They show up, then shame themselves for not showing up sooner. This is reverse compounding. And it's toxic. Shame shrinks behavior. Joy expands it. To build habits that last, you need to stack them with emotional incentives. The feeling of progress. The satisfaction of follow-through. The microdose of pride that says, I said I would, and I did. It doesn't need to be loud. Just real. Consider the role of anticipation. When you attach a positive feeling to a habit before it starts, you reduce resistance. A warm drink before journaling. A certain song before writing. These aren't indulgences. They're primers. They signal the body, good things live on the other side of this action. This matters because your brain isn't a spreadsheet. It's a storyteller. And it remembers how something felt far more vividly than how long it took or how effective it was. That's why one painful attempt at running in high school can stop someone from trying again as an adult. The emotional stamp lasts longer than the actual workout. So flip it. Build habits that don't just check boxes, but create small wins your brain wants to return to. Even if the habit is hard, reward the completion. Let the success echo. But be careful, don't outsource your reward to external applause. Intrinsic reward lasts longer. Feeling capable, competent, in control, these are sustainable. Likes, praise, and numbers? Fleeting. Build a system that fuels you from the inside. Here's another emotional lever, tracking. When you track progress, even in the simplest form, you light up the brain's reward center. A check mark. A tally. A sticker. It's childish only if you think children are the only ones who understand motivation. Adults are just kids with more expensive toys and deeper insecurities. Your brain likes closure, completion, celebration. Use it. Even better, connect the habit to your why. Not just what you're doing, but why it matters. Walking daily isn't about steps, it's about energy for your kids. Writing each morning isn't about word count, it's about building a legacy. Attach emotion to action, and repetition becomes meaning. This is how behavior becomes identity, and identity becomes joy. Because you won't stick with habits that feel like chains, but you'll run toward ones that feel like freedom. Next, we'll explore the power of accountability, how others can multiply your consistency and lock your habits into place. Emotions seal habits into memory and increase repetition. Small celebrations reinforce identity and progress. Habits tied to intrinsic joy last longer than those tied to guilt or pressure. What emotion follows your most important habit, and how can you make it feel better? After completing a habit today, celebrate, smile, say, "I did it." Or write down one win. Let your brain feel the reward. Chapter 9: Accountability locks the loop. Left alone, most people drift. Not because they're lazy, but because isolation blunts precision. Alone, you can justify skipping. Alone, you can hide from the truth. But add one witness, even a silent one, and suddenly the stakes rise. Accountability doesn't mean shame. It means visibility. We perform differently when someone else knows. Not because we want gold stars, but because we want to live in alignment with our word. And nothing cements a habit faster than showing up for someone else. This is why workout partners matter. Why mastermind groups thrive. Why 12-step programs work. Not because the steps are magical, but because the room is watching. You become someone who doesn't just try, you follow through. According to research from the American Society of Training and Development, people are 65% more likely to meet a goal after committing to someone else. That number jumps to 95% when they schedule check-ins. Accountability is not a hack. It's a multiplier. It transforms discipline from private effort into shared momentum. You can build this in layers. At the lightest level, there's public declaration. Tell a friend what habit you're starting. Say it out loud. That alone creates tension between who you say you are and what you actually do. That tension, if managed well, becomes motivation. Next level? A partner. Someone who's in the arena with you. Doesn't need to be chasing the same goal, just someone who's committed to their own rhythm and respects yours. Daily texts. Weekly check-ins. Shared spreadsheets. Not for pressure. For precision. Then there's structured accountability, coaches, trainers, mentors. These are people who hold you to a standard higher than your mood. On days when your discipline fades, their belief becomes the bridge. You borrow consistency from them until yours returns. But the most powerful form is identity-based accountability. When people around you know you as the one who writes, the one who trains, the one who never misses, your standard becomes cultural. Now, skipping isn't just letting yourself down, it's violating the room. That social tension isn't fear. It's fuel. The trick, of course, is finding the right people. Accountability with the wrong crowd backfires. If the culture mocks effort, discipline dies. If the norm is drifting, you drift. That's why one of the best decisions you can make is upgrading your circle. Not just for inspiration, but for expectation. Jim Rohn said it best, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's not a motivational quote. It's behavioral math. If your 5 closest peers are disciplined, growth-minded, and relentless about improvement, your floor rises. If they're distracted, complacent, and allergic to discomfort, your ceiling lowers. Culture compounds behavior. So build a room that mirrors your future, not your past. If you're the most consistent person in your circle, find a new circle. Not to abandon loyalty, but to expand possibility. Accountability isn't about being watched. It's about being anchored. Anchored to your goals. Anchored to your habits. Anchored to the version of you that doesn't negotiate with excuses. Because when discipline falters, and it will, accountability steps in. It remembers your why when you forget. It holds the line when your willpower breaks. It keeps the compound effect alive. Next, we'll explore the long-term game, how to stay patient when results lag and the harvest feels far from the seed. Accountability multiplies discipline and locks in consistency. Social proof and expectation reinforce identity-based habits. The right people raise your standard before you do. Who knows about the habits you're building, and do they make it harder or easier to stay the course? Text one person today. Share the habit you're committing to and ask them to check in with you in 3 days. Let them help you lock the loop. Chapter 10. Patience is the hidden engine. A farmer never digs up the soil to check on the seed. He waters. He waits. He trusts the process. Not because he's passive, but because he understands how growth works. Most people quit not from lack of effort, but from lack of patience. They confuse silence with failure, stillness with stagnation. But in the world of compounding behavior, nothing could be further from the truth. Progress, like interest, is invisible until it isn't. You journal for 30 days and feel the same. You work out for 6 weeks and the mirror doesn't blink. You write every morning and wonder if the words matter. That's the danger zone, when the input is high and the output feels low. But here's what's actually happening. Roots are growing. Change is cellular before it's visible. The neural pathways are still being built. The identity is still being shaped. The habit is still being hardwired. But because there's no trophy yet, most people walk away. They kill the harvest in pursuit of faster soil. Impatience is the tax we pay for expecting progress to be loud. The truth? It's often silent. Compound gains don't show up evenly. They spike. One day you notice your thoughts are clearer. One day you realize the cravings are gone. One day the page fills with ease. But that day only comes if you kept showing up before it arrived. There's a concept in finance called the hockey stick curve. Long flat line, then sudden spike. That's behavioral compounding too. And those who stick through the flat line are the ones who ride the spike. But patience isn't passive. It's active trust. It's discipline without applause. It's motion without immediate reward. It's doing the right thing when the scoreboard is broken. This is the part the highlight reels don't show. The in-between. The practice. The ordinary. It's what Olympic athletes call the grind, years of work for moments of glory. And yet they keep going. Because they trust time more than they trust mood. In a culture built on speed, patience is rebellion. It's a refusal to let urgency dictate your rhythm. It's a decision to grow at the pace of permanence. Patience doesn't mean settling. It means scaling. The gym rat who trains 5 times a week isn't hoping for a beach body tomorrow. He's building resilience for the next decade. The writer who ships work daily isn't after a viral hit. She's sculpting her craft. The investor who lets his money sit isn't avoiding risk. He's letting time do what time does best. They all play the same game, delay the reward to multiply the return. And here's the twist. Once you fall in love with the process, patience becomes natural. You stop checking the mirror. You stop chasing the validation. You focus on rhythm. And rhythm never lies. There's power in knowing the seed is growing, even when no one else sees it. There's strength in watering it anyway. Let others jump program to program. You keep planting. Let others chase hacks. You stay rooted. Because the harvest is coming. Slowly, then all at once. Next, in the final chapter, we'll talk about becoming the type of person who doesn't stop after the first season, how to carry these habits for life. Compounding progress is often invisible before it explodes. Patience is not passive, it's disciplined trust in the process. The reward is reserved for those who keep going when results are quiet. Where are you expecting fast results, and how can you choose rhythm over rush? Pick one habit you're building. Commit to it for 30 more days, regardless of visible results. Let time do its quiet work. Chapter 11. Become the person who keeps going. Discipline isn't what builds greatness. Identity is. And the most powerful identity you can adopt is this: I'm the kind of person who keeps going. Not when it's easy. When it's boring. When it's silent. When no one is clapping. When the finish line isn't even in sight. That's the threshold most people never cross. They build habits like sprints, short bursts, high energy, fast collapse. But what compounds over time isn't hustle. It's sustainability. The behavior you can keep doing when the mood fades, the novelty wears off, and the returns haven't arrived yet. That's where transformation lives. People talk about breakthroughs as if they happen in a flash. But breakthroughs are built from what no one saw. The 10th week at the gym when the scale doesn't move. The morning writing session when the words feel stuck. The meditation that feels pointless until your mind finally goes quiet. Every time you choose to continue anyway, you are becoming someone unshakable. This book hasn't been about tactics. It's been about becoming. About crafting a life where the default behavior serves your future self. Where the habits aren't heroic, they're habitual. Where growth is less about ambition and more about architecture. And here's the truth. The person who keeps going isn't special. They're not gifted. They're simply anchored. Anchored in clarity. Anchored in process. Anchored in rhythm. They've stopped arguing with the scale, the calendar, the algorithm. They no longer need to be convinced. They've made the decision once, and they keep re-choosing it in silence. That's who you've been becoming. With every page read. Every walk taken. Every small, repeated act, you're layering new beliefs, rewiring your default, forging a different trajectory. Not because you tried harder. Because you showed up longer. That's the final form of compounding, when the behavior becomes embedded. When it stops being something you do and becomes part of who you are. Like brushing your teeth. Like locking the door. Like saying thank you. It's not effort anymore. It's identity. You're not chasing change. You're embodying it. And from here, the path continues, not by leveling up your intensity, but by deepening your foundation. Your disciplines may evolve. Your routines may shift. Your goals may expand. But the core remains: I show up. I keep going. I let time multiply the effort. You don't need motivation anymore. You've built a system. You've crafted a rhythm. You've learned to love the practice. That's not the end of the journey. It's the beginning of a new way to live. And if you ever doubt whether the seeds are still growing, return to this truth. Everything you've been doing has been compounding, quietly, powerfully, inevitably. Let others chase the loud wins. You'll keep stacking the silent ones. Because the future belongs to those who keep showing up. Long-term transformation belongs to those who persist without applause. Identity-based behavior outlasts motivation or intensity. Becoming the person who keeps going is the highest return habit of all. Who are you becoming because of what you consistently do, and how will you keep becoming that person? Choose one habit you've built during this journey. Commit to doing it for the next 100 days. Quietly. Consistently. As who you now are. Take care and be well.